That's not gonna happen.
That's not gonna happen.
Or we have to be very aggressive with them and really make a point that why are you watching people who will not fight for you?
That's better. To go after their viewers, not go after, but you know what I mean. Like go, like try to pull their viewers away because those people, the Sam Cedars and the Kyle Clintons, they're never going to. They're very cushy in their positions, and their jobs depend on us not getting the things that we need. So that's not
what's going to be.
They were in that electoralism platform, and they asked for our opinion, so they need to be.
We tried to get Crystal Ball to come to an Assange action, she ghosted us. So that's I don't think
Money.
that's happening.
No, we gotta call these people up, and that's not.
So what's going to be powerful? Because all of what we're saying we could do is great. They're really wonderful. But what's going to be better is when all of these organizations are all seeing it at the same time. That's important.
We need to come together across causes. There needs to be more solidarity. I practice this every day. I go to healthcare events. I show up to anti-war events. I show up to Palestine events. I don't just do Assange stuff. And we need more of that solidarity across causes. We need.
Cooking in a couple minutes. Just give me 2 minutes, guys. We're going to be listening to Revolutionary Blackout Network's third-party summit for most of this and cooking up some vegan dishes.
Show that solidarity, and then we'll come when you have something. And we need that. And there's so much division amongst issues. It's like, well, I'm not fighting for Assange. I'm doing this. It's not my thing. Who cares if it's your thing? Like, it doesn't need to be your thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, just show up. Show up.
You know? Yeah.
Right.
Right. So this is what So yeah, we got to get the list together, and then from the list contact and begin, the conversations, and just getting on board with some of the same sort of broad strategy, and while everybody's still in their own lane doing their own activism that they've already been doing, but this is on top. It's doing your own work, and it's okay as a unifying national. Mutual aid, building community movement. This is what we're doing nationwide, but this is what I'm doing. So that's what we need to do, and that's what we're lacking. All of what you're bringing up is conversations we all need to be having. The list of people I'm talking about need to be having, so we can all get on the same page. We have come to the end of this hour. The next. We would be able to push past, but the next hour is actually inherently debate, so you can't push past the for this particular topic that we can actually go for another hour. But I do want to go to Javier, because he's been kind of patiently waiting. That's what I'm saying. You're taking it in. You're taking in what we.
I'm loud. You have to cut me off.
But did you have any last? I'm going to get everybody's last comments on this, but I'll start with Javier. What is your last final comments on the topic or any part of this one?
Sure. So we're talking about all these things that have been done. Comrades are involved in Assange work. Some people are involved in healthcare work. We're talking about that, etc. I want everybody that's listening to have a real, truly understanding of just how possible what it is we're trying to do.
All right, I'm not trying to cut them off, but let's start cooking, huh? So, to start out, we're going to do some vegan enchiladas. All right, I'm going to put this in here. All right, so we're going to start with vegan enchiladas. To start my vegan enchiladas, I'm going to be doing peppers, onions, beans inside the enchilada, and some corn. Start out. We're going to get our onion skin and chop up. I'm going to go ahead and slice this guy up. 3 marks down the inside. 3 marks down the inside. Other way. I don't have a lot of room in this kitchen. Cook. chop down. Cut my end off. Chop up the rest. Get those nice big chunks in there for my base.
People are complacent by design, to the point that the consciousness, I think we're making that consciousness there, maybe a little some, but actually for the most part, America is the most propaganda country in the world. That's where we are starting.
All right. I'm going to cook those. Some organic coconut oil. Organic coconut oil. A big old forkful of that for my cooking. Saute those. Then on low heat. Put that back over there on low heat for, I don't know, until sauteed. We're going to add the peppers to the onions about halfway through their sauteing, and some frozen corn. You can go ahead and chop up the rest of those peppers and pull the corn out of the freezer. All right. Chop up our peppers. Cut off the inside. Cut off the bottom. Chop it up. Nice rough, thick chop on these. I want a nice rough, thick chop. Chop off this guy. A couple good chunks off the sides.
Yes, of course.
Alright. Got our peppers and onions all chopped up. Now we wait. Well, that sautés. Low heat. All right.
Yeah, John.
So we got frozen corn from the farm. That's going to go into the mix. I've got turmeric ready. I've got cumin ready. I've got seasoned salt ready. The last thing that I'm going to add to the mix is going to be my beans. I'm going to go ahead and start rinsing them while everything's cooking. I'm going to go ahead and get these black beans rinsed and drained. So first we're going to crack them open and drain them, and then we're going to rinse them. We can do all that while this is going on. Crack them open, flip them upside down into the sink, let them drain for a little bit before we rinse them. And they need a good rinsing already. Shit. All right, so we're gonna let this saute for a little bit. I've got peppers cut. I've got my beans draining. I've got sauteed onions going. I've got the corn thawing a bit. We'll add that to those onions in about 10 minutes. We'll lightly stir once in a while, and we're gonna listen to this summit while we saute, while we cook today. I'll be watching for the chat, see if anybody wants any questions. Looks like this first dish we're starting out slow, so we'll just see how it goes.
Just want to keep it. This is my weekend, and let's do this. James, I'll follow your lead. How do we want this to go down today? How's it gonna work?
We got flour tortillas.
It's gonna go down basically in public pass order. So we're basically gonna do, and from what I can tell, is clockwise order, and we're gonna be asking different questions. And so I know I said.
You're gonna go, hey, you got 2 minutes. We're gonna set up. Oh my God, can you stop interrupting or anything like that?
So we're gonna try to make it insane.
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah, because I'm good at winging it. Okay. So at first, if you guys can take about 45 seconds to 1 minute to each introduce yourselves. I know some of you have been on a little bit earlier, but this is going to be covering some different subjects, and also we have some other people.
We're going to be throwing a little
who are just now joining us.
My hot salsa. Hot salsa, last batch, canned from my garden, in the enchiladas, and my salsa verde for the top of my enchiladas. That's salsa verde round number 2, 9/26/21, my summer canning.
Okay, when Mitch comes back, then we'll go back to him. Jose, if you can start off and tell us who you are, the party that you're running with, and where are you running?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. So, yeah, my name is Jose Cortez. I'm running in the California's U.S. House of Representatives District 51, which represents most of central, eastern San Diego, and then parts of like northeastern San Diego. So I'm running with the Peace and Freedom Party here in the state of California, which is the only socialist political party that has ballot access. I'm also a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, here in San Diego, California. So we're really excited to be here talking to people about socialism and our campaign.
Okay, great. Now back to you, Mitch. I know you fell out just for a second, but if you can give us that information, who are you, where are you running, and what party affiliation?
Of course. My name is Camilla.
How's this look?
Terrence, if you can give us the same answers, please.
Sure. So it's great to be with you both. It's very nice to meet you, James and Steph, and it's good to see Ethan and Mitch again, and to meet John and Jose. This is awesome. So my name is Terrence Cudney. I'm running for State Senate in Massachusetts. My district is called the 1st Essex and Middlesex District. So I'm on the North Shore of Massachusetts in a little city called Boston. So glad to be here with you.
All right. Thank you so much, John.
Hi, how's everybody doing? I really appreciate the opportunity, you guys talking with me today. My name is Don Keating. I'm a Green Party candidate for the Illinois 13th District, born and raised in Springfield, Illinois.
Thank you so much. And Ethan.
Howdy, y'all. Good to be back. My name is Ethan Osborne, U.S. House of Representative, Congress. I'm on the ballot as an independent, Kentucky District 4. I'm a member of the Pirate Party. I'm honestly a member of a lot of parties. I'm active in my local DSA and numerous others. But being in Kentucky, there's, as far as progressive third parties, there's not much there. So I'll work wherever I can.
I got
Sauteing it up, baby.
Thank you so much. And I am JD. I like to watch on the beach. And I did it. I rolled in a child for 24 hours. Okay. So now we got that out of the way. Just time to break the ice, people. First of all, one of the things that I actually want to start off with is on the subject of minimum wage. As far as we know, for at least the last decade, the minimum wage has been set at $17.25 an hour federal. I want to go back in clockwise order and get your thoughts on minimum wage. What do you think it should be set at? Do you think that a minimum wage should be generally? What are your thoughts? I'm going to start off with Mitch.
So everyone talks about a minimum wage. First of all, the minimum wage is way too low right now. And $7.25 is chicken scratch. And I think $15 was good 10 years ago when it first started campaigning for it. I think if we're talking minimum wage, I think 20 minimum wage is what you have to start the conversation at $20 an hour. But if you're asking me for personal opinion, I actually think you need to choose a maximum wage. Not a minimum wage. We need to start looking at, we are taking tax away from people who worked for that money. And then we're saying, you worked for it, you spent your time, your effort, your energy, now we're going to take some money off the top. I feel like we should put a wage cap at $1 million a month, $12 million a year. This is the Jesse Ventura suggestion. I remember where he said that at $1 million, if you can't say, I'm sorry, how did he phrase it? He called it wages, basically. But just untaxed first million, $12 million a year. If you want $1 million, it would provide opportunities for worker co-ops. Is another way that this would work out. For example, if a boss makes $6 million, but he has 12 employees that each made $500,000, well, I think that's fair. That's no tax. He spends as much as he earns. But it's not like that right now. And until we get to that point, we need to focus on minimum wage, which is $20, which is what I would set for minimum wage. But I think we should be focusing on working at the maximum wage. I think currently income tax hurts the working class more than outside.
Okay, thank you so much. Jose.
I got coconut oil on there.
Minimum wage. What are your thoughts on minimum wage? Should it run at the federal level? Do you think it's too low, too high? What are your thoughts?
Definitely,
Add a little
federal
grapeseed
minimum
oil.
wage is way too low. I mean, here in Southern California, $7.25 is laughable. I mean, considering that for the city of San Diego by itself, it's $15. People are still struggling. One bedroom apartment here is $1,800 a month. And that really kind of, I think, brings attention to the fact that we're talking about, minimum wage, or we're talking about, what it takes to survive in a capitalist society, when we're kind of dissociating, I think, as a society that away from our labor already that we're contributing to build the wealth of society.
Let that saute for another 10 minutes.
People are routinely, at least where I live in my area, 60-70% of their monthly take home just on rent and these other kind of things. I mean, we were talking about, the conversation for a long time was $15. We need to increase the wage, and like the person before was talking, Mitch was saying, $15 was good 10 years ago, but for certain areas, I mean, it's not even. It's what we have now, and it's not even close to what we need. And even $20 in itself isn't enough to really have what I would call like a thriving wage, right? We need to have, I think, a wage that's tied to directly the needs of the people in the communities that we're talking about. And I think the federal government really needs to step in to tax these large corporations that are benefiting without any sort of inhibition, without any sort of check on profiteering off of our labor in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a global kind of economic downturn, essentially. And I think, if we're going to be talking about minimum wage, we should be dissociating away from just like a set number when, as we've kind of seen with the ruling class in this country, they can just basically shake things up, raise costs, like we're seeing in housing and food and gas. And we should be fighting for, I think, a minimum wage that is proportional to what our expenses are. For housing, we should be fighting for examples that exist in other countries, where, like in Cuba, for example, there's basically a cap on how much your rent can be proportional to your income. And I think we should be trying to adopt methods that existing socialist societies have used to help combat a lot of these, material conditions that we have here. In a land that, frankly, the issue isn't scarcity, it's abundance, and the ruling class's, efforts to keep us away from our abundance that we've created. So, I think definitely the minimum wage is too low. We need to combat that on the federal level, and we can do that by unifying as a working class against the billionaire elite that are right now, hoarding industrial and finance capital and not telling us there's nothing that they can do for us besides have us fight for the scraps.
So it sounds like you're talking about more of like a proportional wage instead of a minimum wage. Proportional wage meaning that instead of it being too low, is that too much of our expenses take up too much, like our housing expenses take up too much of what we spend on average. I guess that's what you're getting at.
In an ideal socialist society, right? In a capitalist society that we're living under now, yes, the struggle for reform is for, a higher wage. And then I would say that wage should be tied not to the kind of concept we've heard about minimums, right? Which kind of implies like eating, the bare minimum, living in the bare minimum. We should be shooting for a thriving wage, not just a survival wage. And I think, that looks different based on, I guess, just where you're at. But I think that's a conversation that needs to be brought up more. It's not just how do people to survive, but how are we getting people to be in the conditions to create art, create all the things that create a healthy society.
All right, thank you so much. Terrence, please.
Sure. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think I'm the only one on the panel that's running for state office, not federal office. So my perspective might be more sort of gauged towards my state than towards the federal. And I'm happy to talk about federal if you like, but that's not the office that I'm running for. But so to speak to Massachusetts, the general view is that we need to absolutely put our minimum wage increases on a track to match up to labor productivity. Labor productivity in this country is around $24 to $25 an hour, depending on who you cite. And I think that that's what the goal. That's like where we should be in the short term, at least, looking to get to. And so right now in Massachusetts, this might sound like a big number to some of the folks on the panel, but right now in the state of Massachusetts, the minimum wage is $14.25 an hour. But if you look at our housing costs and our education costs, that's nowhere near enough. And I think absolutely at the outset, we should be looking to, especially for big corporations, to the starting number should be $20 an hour. It should be likely, like I said, moving in the direction as quickly as possible of getting to labor productivity. I think for small businesses, you have to be a little bit more conscientious about, how you grow those small businesses to support that. And I think that actually the state government is something I've been thinking a lot about lately, is the idea of the state government subsidizing minimum wage at a proper level for small businesses that can't afford to do it on their own. And so I think I'll leave it kind of there to start. I think we absolutely need to aggressively move in this direction. And so I focus on this idea of matching it up to labor productivity and getting us there as quickly as possible. But the proportional wage that Jose brings up is also really interesting. So I'm going to have to look more into that as well.
All right, John, next about minimum wage.
This is something that's actually likely going to come up quite a bit throughout my campaign, as the leading Democrat right now in the race negotiated Illinois' graduated $15 minimum wage. And that's something that the Democrats here in Illinois have just pounded on that that's a success that they've had, but it's a graduated minimum wage and it doesn't get there until 2025. And right now we're at $12 an hour. So across the state, you have people who are still below a living wage, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Yes, the proportional that Jose brought up is something that's huge. Because here in Illinois, we have Chicago, and then we have rural Illinois, where the cost of living obviously is drastically different. But $7.25 and the corn in is definitely far too low, and we need to get the national level up to something far more sufficient, $15 to $20 an hour.
I don't want to completely cut them off, but putting the corn in, that cooking.
Yes, thank you. I think everything that everyone said already, I pretty much agree with. I used to live in California for almost 10 years. I lived in the Shasta area, which is a lot cheaper up there than SoCal. I didn't realize that the minimum wage said still $7 an hour.
$7.25. Yeah, that's federal.
Yeah, I think that's my fault. But yeah, it needs to be raised to at least 20, to be livable, and to match, to be proportional. 15 is, like you said, 10 years ago.
All right, a lot of cumin. I cover the entire top with cumin, completely covered. And then I'm gonna dust it with turmeric. Just dusting, not come out with crap. So, and another dusting of seasoned salt. Now I'm going to add a bit more coconut oil. Every time I add a new vegetable, I add a little bit more oil. Not trying to drench it, but it'll all get used.
I work sometimes, I plant trees, so I'll get a ground man, but I'll pay the ground man saying that I split. Like a lot of people apply, climber, it is a little more dangerous, but being on the ground is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous job.
All right. So now seasoned salt. Completely seasoned up. That's the seasoned salt. Organic cumin. Organic turmeric. A lot of cumin. A lot of cumin. And then turmeric and seasoned salt. My corn, my peppers, my onions are all in. We're going to let that cook through for a little bit. I'm going to start rinsing my beans. And what I do is just in the can, you pull the tab up about halfway, and then you rinse, drain, repeat a few times. I'm going to turn this back up. It's a really good conversation right now. I got Steph Zamorano's about to speak from Jimmy Dore's woman, Jimmy Dore's wife, also a comedian, ex-teacher.
I have a lot to say to each of you at some point. I don't know, on the air, off the air. But I'm going to just make one recommendation because I got to say this. Here's a recommendation, gentlemen, that you make sure whatever's behind you when you go on different shows, show like a poster of what you're running for or anything so people can connect with you faster. Just a recommendation about what you should do. Okay, now here's my question. We're talking about the minimum wage earlier. I live in the state of California. I grew up in California. I cannot believe the degree of homelessness that I've seen. And I don't know what your experience is or what influence that you want to be able to solve this problem. So, gentlemen, we have a serious issue of homelessness here in the state of California. I believe in the United States, we're seeing just such a devastating degree of poverty. How will you use your position of influence to change that? Mm-hmm. And we're just gonna, you know what? Let's start with Mitch. Hey, Mitch, how's it going, amigo? Let's go with Mitch.
So far, so good. Well, I mentioned earlier that I was in Georgia, so I believe that Miami is a a rightful thing for all men and women. I feel all people have the right to access to land, and I believe housing is a human right. And I think that implementing a land value tax and getting land, telling people if you're going to own land, you have to pay everyone. You have to pay for using that land, the value of the land that you're using, and you're using up all this land. During the 2020 pandemic, Bill Gates became the largest owner of farmland in the United States. He'd be paying for all that land that he's taking up right now. And when we're talking about homelessness specifically, I believe the number, if you're from California, I think the number of homeless people that live in San Francisco, I think 50% of them are from San Francisco, like grew up in San Francisco public school. So we're talking about, it's not like homelessness is, oh, well, they're going to Florida and California because the weather's nice. No, they're from there. And that the system is failing around them. We need public housing, we need multi-family housing, we need land value tax, we need to abolish landlordship. We need to make sure that every citizen has a home that they can call their home.
All right, thank you, Mitch. I appreciate that. How about John Keating?
Yeah.
How you doing, Steph?
I'm great.
So that's something that homelessness is something that we've worked on heavily locally here in Springfield, Illinois, and one of the things that we've been modeling after is Rockford, Illinois is the first community in the country to have functionally eliminated homelessness or chronic homelessness. So they'll have temporary housing insecurity, but they functionally eliminated the long term by using mostly existing federal programs. And what we're seeing is that there are programs targeted for veterans who make up a huge portion of the homeless population. There's youth targeted programs. There are programs targeted for women. And if you have each group separately,
the black beans.
You work through these, you can generally find funding that a lot of areas aren't using that's already there. Obviously, we drastically need to expand funding for getting people into long-term housing, and we need to take barriers off the existing shelters and facilities that we have now. Low barrier housing is one of the hardest things to come by, and it's one of the most important to...
Let's start preheating the oven, guys.
Steps to get them up.
All right, I'm going to turn this down.
John, remind...
This is a great conversation. It's cooking, right? So we're going to turn this down. We're going to get the oven preheating up to 350.
Rockford, Illinois has something
That's amazing, and I think what that was appealing about that, and Ethan, you're going to be next, just so you know, what's appealing, John, is that there's actually a model out there, that we don't have to reinvent things, that, understanding that one city is able to do that. Fantastic. I'm interested in reading more about that. Thank you. Ethan, do you have any kind of, policy that you'd like to share? Or?
Sure. This is something that's, personal to me because I was unhoused for almost 5 or 6 years. That was when I lived in California. I lived in Reading area, and it's a small town, but the homelessness up there is out of control. Luckily, I have my truck that I was able to use my truck, but still unhoused. And
They're all mixed up. We're going to let that simmer for about another 5-10 minutes with the black beans.
Just like food, water, shelter shouldn't be an issue to provide these people. And it's not, so when you compare homelessness in California to homelessness in Kentucky, it's a little different because in California, it's out way more out in the open. In Kentucky, it's a problem too, but they push it to the margins. They really brutalize homeless people here. Like they just locally in the city where my opponent, Republican that I'm running against, near where he lives, they had a homeless camp. They just went and raised it and burned it all down. Offered no explanation for it. That's how they treat the homeless people here. We have more of a rural poverty issue in Kentucky that is not really as well documented or seen because of being rural communities. These people, they're not necessarily without without shelter, but they're living in ramshackle, conditions, and particularly in the Appalachian region. I'm in northern Kentucky. I'm in near Cincinnati, Ohio, right across the river. So I'm in the urban center of my congressional district, and but there's homeless issues here too. But the rural poverty of Appalachia is one of the most poorest regions in the entire country. And politicians here have done nothing. A lot of things they could do. We have how many Walmart supercenters that are abandoned and people providing shelter. It shouldn't be as hard as complicated to provide shelter for our citizens. There's other aspects that are intertwined here, including criminal justice reform and mental health issues, because a lot of homeless people have untreated mental health issues, and that's why they're homeless. And there's back to California in the Redding area, one of their issues with homelessness is they bring all these.
Just layer that up. We're gonna put the filling in, wrap it up, and bake it pretty soon.
They just drop them all there because it's near a city, and they don't provide them resources to reintegrate society. They just dump them there, and it's just a massive problem. So, with my personal experience, had I had the access to the mental health care that I needed at the time, yes. It would have saved me from getting in trouble with the law, and it would have saved me from being unhoused. So that just my own life experience with the whole issue.
Ethan, that's very powerful. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing that. Let's go to Terrence, and then we'll conclude with Jose on this. Terrence?
Yeah, I have to agree with Steph. What Ethan had to say there is incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing, Ethan. I just want to tie it back to the last question about minimum wage. When we look at these issues, we can't look at them in a vacuum. So when I talk about wanting to have a minimum wage at a certain level, I'm also thinking, well, we also need to bring the price of housing down. And I'm actually part of a small new affordable housing group in Gloucester. We actually don't have a name yet, so I can't point to it. But we're really concerned on the way we talk about it in the group is affordable housing with a capital A. Basically, for those who don't know, when you talk about affordable housing, it's usually measured as like a percentage of the average income in the area. And so people will say, should it be 80% of the average income? That should that be the measurement, or should it be 50%? And the fact is, when you have areas that are that have such income inequality as we have in my area, that means that you're throwing a lot of people out of housing that they would normally be able to afford. So when you talk about affordable housing with a capital A, you really need to talk about making it affordable for everyone. And we're actually a big sort of tourism town on the North Shore, for those who don't know about Gloucester, and so we get a lot of folks in here. But if we don't have workers that can afford to, fill the restaurants and live near where they work, then that tourism is going to dry up.
That's what's happening in my hometown. We're having a problem where we have too many tourists buying up houses, but not enough workers buying up houses, and the housing is only for the tourists. People who live there year round can't afford to live there. And that's where we're at. Right. Chili with motherfuckers.
Our bacon is sprinkled, and it should be filled with folks who can't currently afford housing. And Ethan was also alluding to something which is really important for those who are housing insecure or unhoused and have untreated mental health issues. We absolutely need to support supportive services for affordable housing for people as well.
Last ingredient in the enchiladas for the moment, spinach.
Yeah, so the issue of housing is incredibly central to what's happening here in the 51st Congressional District. Southern California, nationwide, has a really bad rap as kind of what the housing situation is. Like a lot of people were mentioning that there's this idea that the people who are houseless here are like from out of town, that they're not, that there's not like a housing issue, that people just come to to be houseless here because of the weather. But a lot of what everybody was saying is very true, that the people who are houseless here grew up here, and a lot of people, it's the unseen people too, people who are couch surfing, who are having to live 2 or 3 families to a 2-bedroom apartment that don't get counted in these discussions about houselessness. And it's very much by design. So our solution as a campaign and as socialists is that the idea of housing should be being this for-profit commodity that can be owned by large corporations, like what we see here in my hometown of Oklahoma, where Blackstone just went in and bought an entire neighborhood, basically. They just buy up these neighborhoods. They start jacking up the rents. We saw rent increases of up to 20% just here in San Diego over the last year. San Diego just actually recently surpassed San Francisco as the most, basically cost-ineffective place in California to live. And we're seeing more and more people, including elderly people, living on fixed incomes, like pensions, being pushed out into the streets. And when we talk about affordable housing here locally, usually what that means is, well, we'll convert an old Motel 6 or something like that into housing that will turn 10% of the units into affordable, and then the rest will be market rate, and we're going to give the developer a huge kickback. It's like a shameless money grab that parrots the language of progressivism, but because the vehicles of power are in the hands of the same people profiting from exploitation, namely local government officials.
Turn the heat off, let it sit for a minute before we start filming.
It's not surprising that any sort of solution that we're offering under the system is one that is just enriching the same people that are profiting off of it. So our solution as socialists is that we need a nationwide movement to not only cancel the rents and mortgages that have already accrued during this ongoing pandemic, but to guarantee housing as a constitutional right, because there's no guarantee. Right now, people have the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, whatever that means. But that doesn't mean anything to me if you don't have housing, healthcare, education, childcare, the things that make a person actually have the material basis for a high quality of life. So we need to not just fight for developers to give us a larger piece of the pie. We need to fight for a nationwide movement to eliminate corporate landlordism and this kind of for-profit landlordism. Here in San Diego, a big chunk of that is people wanting turnkey operations, wanting to basically operate Airbnbs, non-union, like hotel rentals, basically is what they want. And a lot of this housing is sitting empty. Like what Jeff was saying, it's a crime for housing to be sitting empty while police are carrying out raids on housing encampments here in the riverbeds of Southern California. And yeah, so we're finding we need it can't be just a local campaign. It has to be a national one, uniting, because whether you live in Southern California or you live in Appalachia or you live in Appalachia or you live in
turn that down. Hope you guys can hear me now. I am going to fill and start baking. Move on to dish 2. So, take this mix of So we got beans, spinach, peppers, onion, corn, all sauteed slowly. And we are preheated.
All right, so I'm going to shake this up a little bit. I know I have a border here, but I'm actually going to go out of order because I'm JB and that's what I do. So because it's kind of intimidated, we're going to go to income inequality. Because income inequality is closer to it to housing. And just to let you guys know, I have been housing insecure. I know what it's like to be housing insecure as a child. And so this is directly tied to people see, or outsider
You? Here we go.
A few things that I really think would have a huge impact on income inequality. One of the things that's part of the Green Party's Green Deal is moral job guarantee. And since all Americans have a job, they're able to work, is going to drive up the median wage. And then couple that with a negative income tax. A lot of folks like the UBI, but I prefer negative income tax to bring folks up to the median. That way we're not also giving money to folks who have no issue and are those who are contributing to the inequity. But it's really simple, and I think those are two things that are going to have a huge driving impact.
Okay, thank you so much, Ethan. And then we're going to go to Terrence. Sure. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry, John. Oh, you had something else to say?
Oh, I was just saying I'm moving to somewhere quieter. I'll be right back.
Okay, all right. Now, Ethan, your thoughts on income inequality?
Yeah, first, Steph, thanks for the advice on the background. My background, I'm literally in a closet that I converted into an office.
Honestly, your audio is great, your video is great. It's just when you have such heart, Ethan. I want to honor your heart, and I want people to see who you are and see your name there and what you stand for. So you're right on target, buddy.
Thank you. But back to the income inequality. Something else that is crucial to this is busting up corporate monopolies. And also, like we talked
All
about.
wrapped up, put in the oven.
UBI is also an option for that. The specifics of that are, but I think those are probably the top three things on my ideas that I would have for addressing income inequality, because we have the wealth family and more wealth than almost the entire, not almost the entire working class in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. What is it? 20% of Americans, the wealthiest 20% own 84% of the wealth. If I'm not mistaken, this graph is correct, but yeah. So a maximum wage would affect these people like the Walton family, Bezos and Elon Musk, but also it's a problem of corporate monopolies and bust and not stop recognizing corporations as individuals.
Sure. So pretty simply, my thought calls for lower tax class, lower. So when it comes to tax revenue, which takes for everything that we do in our state, this kind of stuff is just a complicated math problem. And so the question is, how do you grow the pot so that you can use more for services for people? Well, you do that. You lower the are struggling to afford their taxes, taxes, I should say, on those who are struggling to afford their taxes, and raise it on the wealthier. And I think it's pretty simple.
And I'll boil that water.
In that aspect.
While we start baking the
I will say is to echo what
bacon
Mitch was saying. What he's getting at there, Mitch, is economic democracy. And this is a concept that we don't talk a lot about in circles outside of this one, these kinds of ones, which is the idea that we need more democracy in our economy. We need to incentivize that through tax incentives at the state level. We can say, look, we want to give you a tax break for converting to a worker co-op. That's something that is helpful to our people, and so it's something that should be done. We want to incentivize greater employee stock ownership instead of random investors owning huge amounts of stock. Allow workers to have a say and a stake in the game for how their company performs and benefit from that. In addition, just corporate forms, I think really helps to move the needle on issues like this. It helps to move forward the topic of making sure that the work that you're involved in is equitable. And
again, I don't want to interrupt the discussion, but this is a cooking segment, not a political segment. Ha ha ha. It's always political with me, so that's why I'm a Stoney progressive. But at the moment, I have got water boiling. I am going to get some cream of soup going. Bit of water. Cream of chicken soup. We're going to do cream of chicken soup, baked chicken strips, peas, quinoa, and a casserole. So this will not be technically vegan, it'll be vegetarian, but we got the baked chicken strips, we got the cream of chicken soup, we're going to do quinoa in the water here, and then we got frozen peas. We'll put that all in the casserole dish, and we'll have a fantastic creamy dish that'll be good all week or later while these enchiladas cook. All right.
That's the benefit from the stock.
We got a little bottle to kill. Let's blaze one up and enjoy this discussion.
That take money from their own pockets. They're the same people that have the control over the vehicle power. The people that have control over Congress, people that have control over local and federal government aren't, working people. They're not made up of working class people. They're coming from a class of ruling class people with direct ties to the owner class of this country. And as socialists, our solution is we have to address that real material class contradiction, that we can't expect the people who have power, the ruling class of this country, the owner class, to basically abolish income inequality unless we have an organized and disciplined movement of people willing to fight, like what we saw in the 30s, right? And what we saw in the heyday of the American labor movement that abolished things like child labor, that abolished things like working 12-hour days for 6 or 7 days of the week. And, income inequality, I think, can only be addressed when we've eliminated from society and eliminated from our economy the rule of the owner class and the capitalist class as the way that our economy is structured. We can't have, I think, we can try to win, I think, certain concessions and reforms, which we should do, and which is like the whole purpose of our platform and our campaign is to go out there and organize people to demand higher wages, to demand human dignity in the workplaces. But we're not going ultimately, because at the end of the day, the system right now possesses the means of control. They have the police, they have the prisons, they have the media that's able to tell us it's our fault that we're not making 70,000 plus or six figures as media consultants or Bitcoin miners or influencers or whatever. There's all of this superstructure and structure that's there to keep us away from actually having control over the means and modes of production that we have to use. I think really, we got to fight for the reforms, but we have to really fundamentally address our enemy, not as just individuals within the current economic structure or like benchmarks that we should be trying to reach or like dollars that we earn per hour or something like that. I think we should be shooting for control over the means of production, creating a society that is not based on just producing as much garbage as we need to just increase the profit, but based on what people actually need, the amount of housing, the amount of material they need. I think that ultimately needs to be our long-term goal. But in the short term, yes, we address income inequality by basically combating these large corporations, by eliminating, by nationalizing, frankly, things like Amazon, which frankly are built on things that we've all paid for, roads, things that we've already contributed to. I mean, Jeff Bezos didn't invent the internet. Elon Musk used basically University of California, Davis as his research facility for his Neuralink. I don't know what you call them, nightmare experiments that he's trying to do. So I mean, like our resources, our public resources are already going into creating all of this wealth. It's just privatized and held away from us, and we need to nationalize that wealth, and that's how we can abolish income inequality, make it illegal.
Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to add one comment from myself. The wealth inequality is a means that is by design to
quinoa, and some boiling water.
Because they need you to be impoverished in order for them to have as much power as they have. For the rich, especially billionaires and multimillionaires, it is extremely dangerous for them to have the resources that they have because now they can steer the nation in which way they see fit and take it out of the hands of the populace of the people. And so one of the reasons why I say that is this is one of the reasons for taxation, as I am, a little bit of a student of MMT, is that the taxation is used in order to keep, having so much power in the hands of the small people and keeping it within the power of the hands of the many. So, Steph, your next question and or follow-up question, if you please.
All right, gentlemen, I was a public high school teacher for over 20 years. I mean, over 20 years. And I valued the idea and concept of public education, that everybody has access to that. And, with all my years of experience, we see in different communities, some communities are in despair, and some communities are just soaring. It's a very broad question, gentlemen. What is your vision? How does it fit in the future for how you see it? How do you want to utilize public education? What do you think needs to happen to public education? What would be like the perfect scenario? So it's very open. It's kind of an open-ended kind of question for you. What's your vision? How do you see it? What are the concerns? Up to you, gentlemen. And let's go right back to Ethan Oz. Ethan, you're stealing my heart. But all of you are terrific. This is really so informative for me. All right, Ethan, what do you think about it?
Well, I'm glad you picked me because my mom was also a teacher. She was an elementary school teacher. She taught kindergarten, K through 5, and the local elementary school where I went there too, actually. And that school needs to be rebuilt. It's crazy. I don't want to get into it. It looks like a jail. It doesn't really have windows. One of those style schools that was built in the 80s. Really weird. But anyways, so this is a pretty complex, complicated topic. But I'll start by saying I feel like the education system overall is just completely inefficient, especially with the curriculum and what people are taught in their public education. And so, like, looking back, I wish, you know, if I knew now what I know then, or maybe I got it backwards. Like, I wish when I was in high school, I would have went to vocational school and learned a trade while I was in high school. That way, when I graduated, I could have went straight into a union and be retired by now. But instead, they added a bunch of BS that I've never used since. And then I ended up going to college. And in college, I feel like the general studies, I understand the need for some things, but the 2 years of general studies for a bachelor's degree, that could have been taught in high school. And the stuff that, you know, it could have just been more efficient, and I could have learned a lot more at that time would have been used towards what I was studying instead of all this other stuff. And they do that to just milk money out of people. And then on top of that, you pile up all that debt. I think my college debt was about $40,000. I have a bachelor's in geography, and yeah, I got racked up at least $40,000 in that. And we have to forgive the student debt. That's a major issue. And I am extremely lucky that mine was recently forgiven because of my veteran status. And that was like a major deal for me because it helped my credit repair. Because now that that's gone, my credit score has started to rise to where I can actually get a loan for my own place instead of renting, which I've been doing my whole life. So that's one thing. Just looking at some notes. Back to the class dynamic that Jose mentioned earlier. That applies to education too, because the rich have their own system of education, and the public schools are neglected. And you got the charter school issues. Like it's the same. All these topics really, it all boils down to the same things of inequality and access to, equal access to all of these things, including education. The rich have their own education system, just like they have their own criminal justice system. So, yeah, it's the best courts you can buy, the best education you can buy. And underclass are neglected in every single thing we're talking about. And education is part of that. So, I think we should probably get rid of charter schools, maybe ban private schools altogether.
Ethan, I really appreciate your response. I think, sharing the concept that there's a lot of inefficiency in public education. And I was at a school that they constantly were saying, go to college, let's make sure the kids go to college. And I kept saying, not everybody is meant for college. Where are the vocational? Where are the trades? Where are these experiences that kids need to get that otherwise the public education can provide something, but that real experience of having a mentor or being in a trade, they got rid of wood shop, metal shop, anything that was hands-on, they got rid of that. I'm going to throw this now. I'm going to go with John, and then we'll go to Nick.
Layer it up with cheese. Layer it up with
John, what do you
fake cheese, of course.
What's your goal? What are your concepts?
Bake it for 10 minutes with that on.
Right before I go, I just want to say that I am a product of vocational education. I actually took commercial foods and culinary arts right out of high school instead of going to college. So I don't have college debt. So that's one thing I can definitely say. So I thank you so much for that. And just want to let you guys know that I am headed out. Savvy is now here. The substitute teacher is leaving.
Savvy!
It was so good to see you all here.
Savvy,
I wanted you guys to continue with this amazing conversation. I'll be listening in on YouTube as well. Please make sure to give this also a like. And if you're not subscribed, what the hell are you doing? All right. Good night, everybody. I'm out.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, John, we'll continue.
The class distinction is a massive issue. We look at our public schools and they aren't getting the resources that these folks who have access to a different system are getting. I don't think anybody here would argue that our public schools and our curriculums are designed almost entirely to stifle dissent as we're pushed towards standardized testing and the one-size-fits-all model. I think that we're going to see if we were able to switch to a model that actually focused on interests and skills rather than teaching all of these specific things and having the prerequisites knocked off the list that folks don't have.
I'll just turn the heat down on the cream of chicken soup.
People who are much more developed, not just educationally but socially, by the time they're finished with high school. A huge portion after that is
good. All right, we got like a 10-minute simmer. Let's listen to the show. 10 minutes while the quinoa cooks and the cheese melts on our enchiladas.
It's something that it's not built for everybody, and we've been pushing people towards this for-profit system, and that's entirely what the push towards higher education for degrees that aren't as valuable as they're being portrayed as has been. It's just feeding into capitalism more. So publicly funded higher education, publicly funded trade schools, and actually focusing on the individual student's needs rather than a one-size-fits-all, and providing the resources for that is massive. Instead of defunding our teachers, we need to reallocate the funds from these programs like the police we've seen aren't effective and put them into places with new technologies and new standards that we know now work.
All right, John, thanks so much. I'm going to go with Mitch next, and then we'll go to Jose. So, Mitch, what's your response on education, amigo?
So, likewise, just on the subject of police, I'm from the greatest city on earth, Chicago, Illinois. And all our police stations are state-of-the-art, and our schools are not. We have a big problem making sure that the police get all the funding and that our schools are left to the dust. We also have a big charter school problem in the city of Chicago. Like Ethan, I'm very anti-charter school. One of my big problems is that they're publicly funded but privately owned.
Yes.
And to the fact that in Chicago, I don't know if it's still the problem. It was one of my biggest problems. They weren't allowed to unionize the charter schools in Chicago, which
I've heard that.
Disgusted me beyond belief. Education is a privilege, not a right. Information should be free and accessible, and I believe that in our day and age that we are using it as a for-profit model, and education, I didn't finish college. It wasn't for me, and I wish I had realized that, but I was on a path thinking that it was a must-do, must-pursue. I have to be on this path. And I know kids that also left school who were in far, far more debt than I was. That I actually have a friend that is no longer with us, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. What I'm trying to say is when we're talking about education, we need to focus more on the actual subject of education. Right now it's for profit. We don't care if kids finish or not. We'll throw them here's a phone, here's an extra $10,000. You'll have to pay it back eventually, but here's you can get it right now. Give us $6,000 right now. It's not a system that cares for the people. If you want to be educated, you shouldn't be punished monetarily for wanting to be educated.
Mitch, thank you so much. All right, let's go with, do I have Jose?
Sure, yeah. So, education is an important subject. My mom's an elementary school teacher my entire life. I worked as an in-class aide for children with special needs for several years, and I've seen very just clearly, what the state of, our education system, both in the public side of things and also the charter school side of things is. I would agree with a lot of the statements that people have said here about charter schools, that a lot of the time that they are very much intended for siphoning outright resources from public schools for union busting, for union breaking. That is definitely very much my experience with charter schools, despite whatever kind of aesthetic they try to apply to the outside of them as like, progressive or whatnot. That being said, the issue of education, I think, needs to be broken into short-term, kind of reforms and long-term kind of goals that we need to address as a society. The short-term, goals that we should be shooting for are for just more equity and access to education, just in general. We've seen two complete kind of different sets of education that exists in this country, like people before me have talked about. One for the wealthy that includes subjects like humanities, that includes subjects like art and music, that includes subjects that are broader than just the utilitarian kind of nature of what we've been told education is, which is, for most of us as workers, education is what we need to do to make money to survive. It's not necessarily even about like particularly bettering our lives. If that was the case, there wouldn't be so many marketing and advertising people in this country.
Watching the cheese right now, trying to wait for it to get a nice melt on before I add the Verdi to the top.
Necessarily be in its demand right now. So I think we need to really, really rectify that. We need to address that people in low-income areas, people that are working class people, aren't being provided an actual education that includes things beyond just the bare minimum of arithmetic, reading, comprehension to go out and work, for the ruling class. And then the long-term goal is to eliminate the for-profit nature, and we should do that right now in the short term too. To eliminate the for-profit nature of higher education, we should abolish all of the student debt that's accrued from now until way before. The idea of debt being a prerequisite to education is ridiculous. It's obviously very classist because, I don't know very many people that go out and just drop $50K to go and to study, to maybe go get a degree, or the people that I do know who have degrees for working in food service or the retail industry is ridiculous as well. You shouldn't be, indebting yourself for life potentially just to go get a higher education. It makes me think of, a different social system that existed even, within a lot of our families' lifetimes in the Soviet Union, where somebody was able to go and live on a collective farm, like Tereshkova. Her name was, what was her name? Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space. She started out in a collective farm, but because education was a guaranteed right, it wasn't a for-profit system. They were able to take correspondence courses and graduate from college. They got interested in a parachuting class, basically, that was just offered because such things. Leisure was just a part of life in a social society, and they were able to basically use that to go to space, to become the first Soviet woman in space. And I think that we should be modeling our education system off of a very similar model, of one that allows people not only the means to develop the infrastructure that we need to survive as humans, right? Like food production, economic production, like factories, stuff like that. We should also be offering education as a means for bettering our society through things that oftentimes aren't prioritized in a for-profit society, like art, like music, like civil projects, like having, like the person I was just talking about, those parachuting courses, and just other kinds of civil society that we can have. So, obviously that's the long-term goal. Short-term, get the cops out of these schools.
Yes.
Give them funding to have, dignified classrooms and teachers. Staff these classrooms with special education staff to help start addressing some of these traumas being done by this capitalist system. Those are the things we need to do in the short term, but we also need to address that we can't have dignified education under capitalism.
Gentlemen, I can't tell you how inspiring this conversation today has been. It gives me such hope, that you all have such heart and dignity in what your purpose is. Let's go with Terrence. Sir, let me hear what your concept is, regarding education.
Sure. So first off, I have to say I deeply resonate with a lot of what I've heard from my colleagues here in the panel, with regard to public education and public college being free. I think that's something that we absolutely need to do at the federal level. In addition, eliminating student debt, I think, is hugely important. When it comes to my state, I have to admit that I'm a little bit in sort of a cogitation mode with regard to developing my education policy. And that in part comes from, to be honest, something that I think I've gotten a sense of from the panel, which is a deep sort of disillusionment with the education system as it is in our country. And that comes from some personal experience. My undergraduate degree was in international studies, and as you might imagine, most liberal arts colleges, so to speak, still have departments for this kind of study that is very neoliberal, that is very imperialist, that is very neo-colonialist. And suffice it to say, I almost dropped out the semester before I was about to graduate because I came to my seminar teacher for my thesis, and basically the project that I came to him with, which was very sort of anti-colonialist and very sort of about returning to pre-colonial systems of governance, it became very clear that he wasn't going to have much of what I was going to say. And so I almost dropped out, and I was convinced otherwise, and I kind of stumbled through, and I was a very high-performing student, I should say, but just the degree to which I was disillusioned really sort of brought me down a rung, brought me low. And to keep the story short, I had a similar thing happen when I returned to school for 2 years of graduate study in linguistics, a different topic, near where I live now, a little ways away at Boston University. And again, I came forward with the topic that sort of was about kind of shaking up the status quo and thinking about issues of language in a different way. And basically they told me, we can't support that research. We're not interested in supporting that research. So come to us with a different topic. And by the way, you finished up your coursework here. In order to finish your thesis, you have to pay us more money. And I couldn't afford it. So at that point, I did just go ahead and drop out. And so basically, when I look at education, I absolutely think we should support the better funding of public schools. But really, I think we need to look more broadly at how we educate as a country, and it goes to a lot of what folks have said. Part of that, I think, is recognizing that cognitive diversity is a reality, that people learn different ways and people have different approaches to how they understand education. And we should work to personalize education in an equitable way that doesn't overwork our teachers, by the way, but also works to establish better standards for online education so that students can learn in a way that works best for them, and also re-envision an education system where you're entitled to a decent and fulsome education regardless of your economic status. And so I'm still kind of in a thinking mode about the formation of policy for my state here, but that's my general thoughts.
Thank you, Terrence. I think that is exactly what we need to hear, that experience and how you're still grappling with it. And of course, we're going to hand it over to Savvy, but before we do that, I just want to say, look at you, John Keating. Let's fix it. I love that you went and got the sign done. You're in the moment. I love it. All right, Savvy, back to you.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late, but I'm here. I have a lot to say about education. Terrence, both of us are in Massachusetts, and there's a lot of inequalities here when it comes to public education system here. So I'm gonna split this up into two different parts. So I was an academic advisor in higher education. I've done it at Boston University, MIT. I also worked in K through 12 as a teacher's aide, and one of the things that I can tell you is that in reference to higher education, if you want to attend a four-year university, I highly recommend if you can do so, that you do so outside of the United States in a country that has free college. Because the student loan debt, it's not worth it in the end. I know all of my friends and we all have student loans. One of the things I think that I saw is I would repeatedly see students graduate with all this student loan debt. These colleges here are very expensive. And they would get salary offers that I knew there was no way they're going to pay off their student loan debt. So it doesn't make sense at this point in time to go that route. If you can do so, I just recommend that if you're going to do that, you do that outside the United States, or you go into some type of trade if you can. In reference with K through 12, Massachusetts is #1 in public education, but that's only because of the schools in the suburbs. The schools in Boston are not good. The schools in Worcester are not good. The schools in Springfield are not good. And I think it's important to remember how we got here in the first place. Why are the schools in the inner city underfunded and under-resourced? This goes all the way back to the New Deal, and a lot of people don't talk about this. Some of those policies that FDR had for the New Deal did not apply to Black families. And one of those policies was housing. So when white families moved out of the city and moved into the suburbs, they took their money with them. And the Black families were stuck in the inner city schools that were now underfunded and under-resourced. So we don't have it overtly like that today, but but I can tell you here in Massachusetts, most of the families that live in Boston, that grew up in Boston, they cannot afford to move out of Boston into the suburban areas here because the houses are just incredibly expensive. So I think one of the things that has to be fixed, we really have to get property taxes away from public school funding, because obviously people that live in the city don't own as much. Most people rent in the city. That's the big part of the problem. I'm not sure exactly how to fix that, but one suggestion is to fund public schools with federal dollars instead of the state dollars, instead of property taxes. That just has to change. I think charter schools have got to go. And what I've seen happen in Massachusetts, instead of fixing the schools in Roxbury and Dorchester, they just build more charter schools. And the kids have to test into those schools. And most of them don't get in. Or they have a lottery here, education lottery in Massachusetts. If your family wins the lottery, then you can hop on a bus and go to school in Newton. And the schools that are very, funded, well funded here in Massachusetts. It shouldn't have to be that way. It's 2022 and kids are still being bused to school. I really can't believe it. So I think that, again, at the end of the day, I think this all goes back to the funding and the money and the way that the states spend the money. And I really encourage all of you to try to shift your focus just a little bit onto local politics, because this is where we can implement the most change. Most people I talk to don't even know who their city councilor is. That doesn't make any sense, because the city council controls the budget. It's important that you know who these people are. You need to know who's on the school board. So I really want people to focus more on local politics as much as possible. Focus on ballot initiatives where we can actually get some of these things done and implemented. But a lot of this goes back to capitalism, and that leads me to my next question. How do you feel about capitalism in the United States, and do you feel that this is something that can be reformed, or do you feel that it needs to go away altogether? And I'll start with Jose.
Oh yeah, no, I had to adjust myself in my chair right now because I was so ready for this question. Because I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm a socialist. I'm gonna let that cat out of the bag with a capital S, socialist. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. The Peace and Freedom Party is a socialist unity party here on the ballot since literally the anti-war era of the Vietnam War and the civil rights era that kind of accompanied it. So definitely anti-capitalist. I don't think in our party's position is capitalism cannot be reformed. At its very core is based upon exploitation and the extraction of wealth through the suffering of working class people, both here, but also something that doesn't get brought up a lot is the super exploitation of people all over the global South, whether they're in South America, Africa, Asia. Capitalism at its very core is tainted in the blood of millions, if not billions, of people to support, even the facade that people get here in this country of democracy or what have you. So our position is that we need a radical upending of the economic and social structure of this country. The only way to do so is to have a mass movement of people calling for what we all know and what polling has even shown that people already are wanting, which is guaranteed access to housing, health care, higher education, child care. The majority of people support these positions already. And our position as socialists is that capitalism cannot, by its very definition, provide those for the majority of people, and therefore it needs to be abolished and replaced with socialism, where workers' power is against working class people, where the vehicle of the state is in possession of the people, where we have the ability to oppress these terrible elements within society, like the far right. The ruling class right now doesn't have any sort of interest in actually oppressing. You can be a far right paramilitary terrorist, I'll just say it, and it's completely legal and okay in this society. And we need to have, obviously capitalism not only is okay with that, but is actually premised off of that. It needs those groups of special bodies of armed men to oppress us, to maintain its power over us, since they're the minority and we're the majority of people. So yes, I'm definitely anti-capitalism and pro-socialism as the only avenue for combating climate change, for combating the housing and just economic inequality that we've been talking about. For essentially all of our problems that we're encountering, we can trace it back to this poisonous and tainted tree of capitalism. So we need to dig it up big time.
Terrence?
Thank you. Yeah. So this is a bit of a big platform for me to be saying this, and I'll admit to you guys openly that there's a chance that this is the difference between me winning 55 of the vote in my district and losing with 45% of the vote, but I have to say it, I am an anti-capitalist, and that's so I have to do a lot of educating in my district about what that means to be an anti-capitalist. I don't technically identify as a socialist. I identify as a left libertarian. What that means to me is that I basically value equity, freedom, and security in equal measure, and I value them very highly. And so with that in mind, I have to do, like I said, a lot of educating of my district on, what it means to be an anti-capitalist. But the fact is, when I go out on the streets to protest, I'm almost always protesting against some capitalist system. That's what I'm doing. And so it would be disingenuous of me to say that, I'm still a capitalist, even though it might benefit me in my race, frankly, to say that I'm a capitalist. So I'm not. And I had a conversation actually with CJ probably a week ago on his call-in show about like what it means to be a capitalist or versus an anti-capitalist, and not just in terms of the definition, but in practice, like that it means that being capitalist means supporting the ceaseless accumulation and centering of capital in society. That's what it means in practice. There might be a dictionary definition, but that's what it actually means in practice. And the fact is that most people aren't looking to ceaselessly accumulate capital. Most people are looking to live a life of dignity and to just, live well and be happy with their families and that sort of thing. And they just want to be not exploited by the system. And so, like I said, a bit of a big platform for me to be saying. This is the first time that I've really said it out loud, but I think it's important to be clear about what my values are, even if it means not winning an election.
Ethan?
So, same kind of deal here. I'm in Kentucky, and I'm running in Kentucky. So, but the truth is, I'm a unionist. I work in the AFL-CIO, and I've worked for the Forest Service before, and work in forestry still. I work for, right now, I'm with the private.
Got the avocado cut. You want to do some fresh avocado on top.
Fire and other government agencies. So I would consider myself a syndicalist for sure, and trade unionist. And I know that, we live in a capitalist society, so we have to operate within its framework. But so the people who live here just need to be educated. And I know that I'm probably not going to win. My chances of winning are very dismal. It's possible, but the way that, for me to get on the ballot, I had to get all 400 signatures, and I was trying to get 1,000 extra, and I just ran out of time because I'm doing so much other stuff, like work and school and stuff, and so I ended up getting the 400, and it was really tough to do. Because I'm doing it by myself, basically. I'm affiliated with other parties, but me going door to door, getting the petition signatures, that was all me. And even with getting on the ballot, it was really difficult. And I'm lucky I was even able to get on the ballot because a ton of my signatures were disqualified because they sit there and they go through all of them, and it's not precisely filled out to the T. And also the Board of Elections people here in Kentucky gave me conflicting information repeatedly. So, I was told, okay, you don't have to have the city on there, you just have to have the zip code. Then they were like, oh, you need to have everything, or what? They were nitpicking everything, and I had exactly 400, which was just crazy, but they can. Now, I'm just saying, so if I did win, let's say just in some parallel universe, I actually won. My opponents could challenge my signatures, and they could be brought before a judge, and they would most likely find something to disqualify them. So yeah, I mean, I'm not running this to pander to people to get elected. I'm running to force issues on the candidates and try to deprogram people into the truth. So the truth is capitalism is oppressive and it's a failure, and we have to figure something else out if we want to survive.
John?
Yeah, as everybody has stated so far, capitalism is inherently exploitative and violent. I'm a green eco-socialist. I'm a member of Young Eco-Socialists, so I'm a socialist. I believe there's a lot of things that we need to nationalize if we are going to see the quality of life that anybody in this country deserves. Unlike some of these races, I don't have to worry about saying that out loud because I'm kind of the socialist boogeyman in our area for the Democrats and for the far right. But like Ethan said, we have to, the ballot access issues that we see are a symptom of capitalism. The things that Terrence was speaking about protesting in the streets are all symptoms of this system of capitalism. And until we, as Jose said, uproot it, we're not going to see any benefit from it. The Democratic Party is just as bad for voters as the Republicans are. The Republican Party, they disenfranchise individuals, whereas the Democratic Party disenfranchises parties. In 2020, we had ballot access relief, thankfully, but here in Illinois, the Democratic Party got ballot access, or the major parties got ballot access relief, and the third parties, I have to get 5,000 signatures compared to the major parties' 400 signatures, and they do that because they don't want people to have other voices other than things that are benefiting the system's capitalism that they're bought and paid for by.
Mitch?
And just bouncing off that point of only needing 5,000 signatures, let's be clear, we only need that because we just had our census where the normal third-party ballot needs like 5% of the last election signatures. So normally we would need to get like 15,000, right? If that ballpark is kind of good this year. So only needing 5,000, which is a lot, is a blessing. But I'm sorry, that was what was the question again?
To bump there, that's why I'm running for U.S. House rather than state rep again this time, Mitch.
How do you feel about capitalism?
Thank you. Oh, it's awful.
Oh, thank you. It's awful. So I cut that up so the heat can get in there, the sauces can get in there. 5 more minutes, and we are done there.
You're going to be looking at, well, can I get it cheaper here so I can get it for the most here? He let the United Fruit Company overthrow Central American governments. I was 8 years old.
All right, we're wrapping up on the first vegan dish here, and we will throw it in the second one into the oven right afterwards.
Our relations throughout the Americas, I said when I was last on here that the United States empire has done a great job.
We're just going to keep moving.
About the United States and the United States citizens. Americans are the Americans, and we need to start repairing relationships throughout them. We took democratically elected South Durante, and we had a military coup and overthrew him because he was trying to nationalize coal in Chile. Said, hey, this is Chilean coal, not the U.S. oil coal company coal. And we overthrew him. That's the end goal of capitalism. That is what we're looking at when we're talking about capitalism. Unacceptable. We need to move towards systems that benefit the people. I think worker-owned and operated with everything is the way to do it. And until we get to that point, we need to continuously beat down the system because capitalism, the fact that some U.S. states are now considered tax havens in the world is disturbing, especially when you're talking about the United States, where poverty is among the worst of any first world country. They said that poverty in Alabama was worse than they've seen in some third world countries. And I use third world in the sense of what Western media succeeding and call yourself a capitalist, knowing what capitalism has ravaged upon the world and what U.S. capitalism has ravaged upon the world. I'm very much anti-capitalist, anti-U.S. capitalism especially.
All right. I'm gonna pass it to Steph for the next question.
Hey, all right, Savvy, it's so good that you're here. I'm so excited that you're gonna meet these gentlemen. And okay, what's your number one issue, gentlemen? What's your number one issue? What's that issue that has fueled you, that's gotten to you here right now? What's that number one issue that just is inspiring you to go to the finish line? And we're gonna go with Terrence, then John.
Sure. So I wanted to really quickly, if it's all right with you guys, I wanted to quickly
go right ahead.
Respond to some of the comments because clearly people do not understand what left libertarianism is. A lot of people don't. So this is something that Mitch was talking about when he's talking about Georgism. That's a left libertarianism concept. So to some folks were saying, do libertarians support public education and free education for all? Yes, this one does at least. Do the pro debt? No. Do libertarians believe in Medicare for all? This one does. Yes, absolutely. Do left libertarians also build their own freeways? No. Okay. So I just wanted to, address this a little bit because I think people need to really look at these terms and understand. When I talk about being a left libertarian, that doesn't mean that I don't find a lot of solidarity with socialists, with communists, with folks on the left. These are my comrades. These are the people that I build my coalitions with. So I just wanted to kind of address that head on. The question about my biggest issue, the way I put my biggest issue is that I consider myself a real democracy candidate. What that means is I want to actually really get at, this means, confronting the duopoly head on. This means allowing third parties ballot access, as I'm sure everyone here would agree with. And
let that sit for 5 minutes.
This means supporting voting systems
That's ready to go.
More properly oriented towards voter opinion, whether it's ranked choice voting or there are other systems that better represent voter opinion. In addition, I think we need to build coalitions regionally for issues that are, as I believe someone alluded to earlier, very democratically popular. If we were a true democracy, we would have Medicare for all, we would have free public college, we would have a lot of these things. And so building coalitions across these borders that we kind of tend to isolate ourselves in when we say, oh, well, I'm in New York or I'm in Massachusetts, we have our own issues. If we were a coalition built together, we could move things forward a lot more aggressively than we are now. So I think I'll leave it there for now. But thank you for letting me respond a little bit to some of what I'm seeing.
And Terrence, if I were to go to your website, would that you have that definition for your position? If I were to go there, do you have that explanation?
I actually don't, but I definitely should. Given the comments, I definitely should.
I think you should. I think that's great. Hey, we're gonna go with John next, and then Ethan. Go ahead, John.
Similar to Terrence, my main focus with this is almost an umbrella.
I'm gonna get those chicken strips cooked about all the way through before I put everything on top of them. I like to be nice and safe with my vegan chicken, so I'm gonna get that lightly crispy before I add everything on.
Pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, because if we just push Medicare for all, then it's just going to become a feeding trough for these companies that are already, what people don't realize is they're not even healthcare companies, they're holding companies. This is Wall Street that pushes these policies out, and you pay into them every month, and if you don't use them, the payments just go in for stocks and bonds and their investments. Growing up, my dad was diabetic, and my sister was as well, and we saw, even with good health insurance, how much that cost our family and how that made it harder for us to scrape by. And as I got older, I actually ended up becoming an insurance agent for about 3 years. And I sold supplemental health insurance, which is insurance that pays out-of-pocket expenses for when folks go through major things. And I sold it to folks in rural America, small towns and counties around folks and farmers around Illinois during the 2015-2016 election season. So I actually saw these grievances from the folks in these communities, why they were supporting Trump going up to this, because folks don't realize that a lot of these people aren't racist. They aren't bigoted. They just don't have experience to other things, and they don't understand that it's not something that's pushing back directly against them. It's something that's going to be working for all of us. And I saw folks losing their family farm because they came down with cancer. So this farm that's been there for 150, 200 years is just gone. And that's really what drove me to be for healthcare, Medicare for all, and socialized healthcare being the main flagship of my campaign.
Thank you, John. Let's go with Ethan and Mitch.
So that's a really tough question to pick what's at the top of the list. But I will say, like, honestly, what really got me started into this was I had to move back to Kentucky from California to evacuate from the wildfires. Basically, I mean, I worked, on wildfire cleanup and prevention when I lived there. But as far as my family, just constantly having to evacuate from these wildfires, we moved back here because it was just getting too hard to deal with. And so when I came back here and then remembered a lot of the reasons I left Kentucky. One of the biggest reasons I moved away from here was because I had an injury that I couldn't get treated here because I couldn't afford health care. That was one of the things
maybe
that
not the prettiest, but
California was maybe I could get a torn ACL
cheesy goodness,
for like 3 years, and I had to work with the torn ACL for 3 years.
beans,
It was
peppers.
excruciating. I mean, I couldn't even bend my knee, and I had to work like that for 3 years. And then, I mean, there's many other reasons I moved to California too, like trying to grow weed there was one, and for the green rush, and like I was explaining earlier, people go out there just like the grapes of wrath. They think they're going to get rich, and they end up working as serfs in the middle of nowhere. It's crazy. The people know about
This
that.
one done.
But anyway, anyways, I moved out there, had to move back, and moving back here, I'm back to Kentucky, back to Mitch McConnell, back to Rand Paul, and then my congressman, Massey, and I think they're all terrible. And so I don't even know where to start, but what I will say is they're all supported by the John Birch Society, and they're all supported by the Council for National Policy. And if you've never heard of those groups, you've got to look into them. So, I mean, my congressman, Massey, he just gave a speech to the John Birch Society on their 60th anniversary, which is outrageous. No one should be in power that's supported by that. That group wants theocracy in the United States. That's what they want. They want, and they're absolute. Like they thought JFK was a commie. That's how extreme they were. They wanted to assassinate JFK because they thought he was a communist. That's how far to the right they were. That's how they thought. So that's one of the biggest. And Mitch McConnell's an oligarch. He's pillaged the resources of this state since I was a baby. And I think we need to nationalize coal and take the power away from those people. And then another big deal is, of course, the gerrymandering of the districts here. It's outrageous because Massey, his supporters are just wealthy rural landowners. That's how he maintains his power. The population of, almost all the population of this congressional district lives in northern Kentucky, which is an urban center, which is basically it's connected with Cincinnati in a way. I mean, it's right there. And it's made up of 3 counties, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County, and they're all mostly urban populations, and they don't have any representation in this district, hardly at all. And so this district is 14 counties, I believe, and they're mostly rural counties and made up of wealthy white landowners. So I want to see real direct democracy here. I want to see the filibuster abolished. I want to see an end to gerrymandering. I want to see ranked choice voting, criminal justice reform, and nationalization of our resources, and decriminalization of all drugs. decriminalization and unionization of sex work. My website, oz2022.us, has my platform, so I can't pick something at the top because they're all connected.
I hear you on that one, Ethan. Thank you so much. Again, what was your website?
oz2022.us.
All right. All right, let's go with Mitch, and we'll conclude with Jose.
Sure thing. So, I'm 25 years old. I didn't finish school. I work at a pizza place. I am not a typical candidate, and I think that's the point. I don't think that there's any working class people who think they have the power to go out and run for office. And I chose the United States Pirate Party because I think that they're the most honest party. That they allow me to be the most honest man, to be the working class man fighting for the working class. So, and I wanted to run because I think everyone should be able to do the same thing that I'm doing. I feel like everyone can make a difference if they just go out and make that attempt to do so. Everyone has their opinion that matters. They should be able to fight for that opinion. And a big thing for me, if they send me to DC, the Pan-American problems that I addressed earlier, we need to fix our relations with the Americans and the Caribbean. That is my number one. We have not been able. We've been an empire for the Western Hemisphere, and we need to correct that issue immediately. But if you ask me why I ran, it's because I should be running. They don't think I'm the type of guy that should be running, and I want more people who like me to run.
Yes, that is fantastic.
And I have to.
Oh no. All right, maybe Mitch will join us back momentarily. I'm sure he will. Let's go to Jose.
Yeah, no, the thing that gets me up out of bed every day to keep doing this, going out, knocking on doors, identifying myself very publicly as a candidate for office is, my belief and its kind of validation and history and just the world that we live in, that socialism is the liberatory force that's going to actually bring about material change for the people I care about, the people in my community, my family. I met socialists in the parking lot of a police brutality uprising in my hometown. I was not a socialist. I met socialists there, and it made me a socialist seeing that they had a path towards liberation that could actually not only made sense, that it was something that had involved not just screaming into the void of the internet and lamenting at our righteousness, the purity that the world didn't recognize within all of us. It was something that was rooted in dollars and cents. It was rooted in power, in the application of force against an authority that is currently using special bodies of armed men to apply their will to all of us collectively as millions of people. And it really appealed to me as a person dominated by colonialism here in the United States, here in the belly of the imperialist beast, like people have been talking about, that has oppressed so many people. I mean, let's not mince terms. That my experience as a Chicano person here in this country is very radically different than other people in this country, based on the kind of history of my community in this place. And socialism offers a path forward to true liberation, not just symbolic or almost a pandering kind of nod to representation, but an actual path forward to ownership over the economy in a way that a lot of Chicano people have never had the opportunity. So what gets me out, knocking on doors, talking to people, is the genuine belief that in order for the world to be saved from environmental catastrophe, for us to end the constant beating of war drums that the ruling class is trying to whip us up to currently, both with what we're seeing with the invasion of Ukraine, but also with the very, very profound silence that we're seeing about the bombings and starvation of people in Yemen and Somalia. The very tactical reason that's being left out is all tied to the capitalist system we engage in, and that the only path forward materially, not just ideologically, people wishing for what they could have, but the one that's actually liberated people that look like myself in Cuba, in Central America, in Vietnam, in the DPRK, is socialism. And that's what gets me up into the streets every day to knock on doors and to talk to people. Because when I talk to them, people don't know what socialism is. They're told it's something from, they're totally scared of it by some billionaire media mogul or some terrible local politician that points them in a racist or sexist or homophobic direction. But when I actually take the time, when we go out and we talk to people in the real world as workers, I work in a call center. I work 40 hours a week for basically minimum wage. When we go out and we actually talk to each other and explain what socialism is, outside of these weird abstract terms or armchair socialist academic terms, people vibe with it because they vibe with housing, healthcare, education, childcare, an end to exploitation. All of those things intrinsically are within all of us. We're all experiencing that. So that's what gives me hope every day, is knowing that the majority of people believe in socialism. They believe in what we're doing. They just don't know what it's called yet. Giving them that definition is what inspires me to just continue this work. And then I'm just one cog. If I died tomorrow, just real shit, like real talk, excuse my language, I would, the party would replace me because socialism is bigger than just an individual. It's, it's a complete economic and political ideology that's backed by a science, an analysis of material conditions in the world. So that's what, really is the central platform point of our thing, is building not only socialism in the abstract, but right here in our communities, right in the belly of the beast that's terrorizing so much of the world, and we can stop it here.
All right. Once again, gentlemen, those were powerful responses. And you have such heart. Thank God. All right, Sabby, I throw it back over to you.
All right. Final question for all of you. The press issue is a huge one for third-party candidates, independent candidates, even some progressive candidates actually as well. The question that I have for you is, what is your plan to tackle the press issue to get your name out? I'll go ahead and start with Terrence.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to be featured in a local paper early, and that has certainly helped. Just because I'm challenging, one of the most established Republicans in my state, and it's a very, democratic state that I live in. Democratic in the capital D there, not lowercase d, of course. Yeah, so I was fortunate because I'm challenging. He's also the Senate minority leader. Because it's such a blue leading state, so to speak. But yeah, in terms of getting press, I think it starts with independent media here. I think what the service that RBN provides, and I'm so happy and so delighted to be able to be back here again and to see you again, Sabby, and speak with you. I think, yeah, it starts with independent media. That's where it is, and I'll go anywhere and speak to anyone that's willing to listen. And so, yeah, I think other than that, I guess I'll leave it there for now. I think independent media is very important. I think getting out in the streets and protesting is very important. The other thing that I try to do a lot of is volunteering in local communities and joining local groups like I've done for affordable housing, like I've done for domestic violence, joining groups, and basically every way, subversive way that you can to get your name out there is the best way, as far as I've found it, kind of a fight on all fronts for the press. So I'll leave it.
Awesome. Ethan?
Yeah, so again, alternative, media and stuff like that, coming on here is great. I really appreciate you having me because I'm pretty much a nobody. I started out just lurking on Twitter. I honestly hate Twitter. I think it's toxic, and it's refreshing to actually talk to people because it's just people, and it sucks you in too. I've found myself getting sucked in, and it's just splintering in the circular firing squads is not productive. And the other thing, because there may be a chance I might not be able to make it to tomorrow, is one productive thing I really think we should all try to get out of this is maybe form some kind of third-party coalition that can actually pressure the other parties to listen to us more, take us more serious, because they want us all divided up and fight each other. I think it's just not in our interest to do that, and that's what I wanted to add. But then, as far as media stuff, coming on here, this is my first media appearance I've ever done. I do live right next to my public access studio, which I've already signed up for. I'm trying to learn how to use their equipment, and so hopefully I can utilize that to help my campaign, which is something else that I really support is public access and funding that, and so anyone can get in there and have a voice. I think that's really important. And reaching out to underrepresented people is my duty as a public servant. So that's what I've been trying to do. I reach out to all the Latino community here because they're not represented. They're demonized. The wealthy rural landowners, they demonize them, yet they use them for their cheap labor and exploit them. And that's disgusting. So, and politicians and those parties, they don't reach out to them because they assume, oh, well, they're probably not even citizens. Wrong. That's such a racist thing to think. And I'm very multicultural myself, so it's easy for me to be an emissary between different groups. And I use my church. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and it's just you can be whatever religion you want and go to this church. You can be an atheist or a Buddhist or a Hindu, or anyone's welcome in a Unitarian church. So it's a great place to network politically too. Reaching out to the local mosque here. They're another group that gets demonized and they're not represented. And the Democrats and Republicans don't care about them here, and they don't pay any attention to them. Reaching out to the poor working class, the underclass, and just trying to get Amazon to unionize here, because Amazon has set up shop here in Kentucky. It's a major hub, and they need to unionize. And that's something I'm working on fighting for during my campaign. I mean, I have a lot going on. I'm doing this. Like I said, I work and doing this recertification of wildfire stuff is really, and I have to get back in shape after being on the couch for the past year. Just a lot of things going on, but I'm just doing this. I feel like I should. I feel like, I'm worried about my son's future, and I want to bring us all back together. And it's the past 4 years. It's traumatic for how everyone's families have been torn apart, and had problems with my own family over politics, and it's horrible. We have to heal the wounds and move on together. So in solidarity. So I'm just really grateful for you.
I wanted to take a seat. While this is finishing up. Alright, I wanted to talk on that 1 second, and that's my constant push of opening people's minds and not deleting them. And it's easy to get frustrated with people and just stop talking to them, stop hearing their ideas. It's much more difficult to keep pushing against the propaganda, keep shadow banning. Keep shadow blocking. And I mean that by these people have things that they can't see, and you need to help open their eyes and help them block their shadow. You need to open their eyes to their shadow so that they can start working on it. And if you delete somebody, if you censor them, you're not going to get to that point. We almost got the chicken done. I think we'll just get this thing started. This is such a slow process in a small kitchen, food prepping. We're going to get screw it. We're going to go ahead and get through it, get to the dish. I'm going to get the oil made, and after we get the oil and edibles kind of prepped, we'll call it a day. But so yeah, we're wrapping up on the dish. I got a bowl burning. But you absolutely don't want to delete people. We got to work on, and that's like when these guys talk about campaigning and door knocking. That was better. Move my chair down. When we campaign and door knock, we need to open people's eyes to socialism. We need to open their eyes to what means, taking the means production means. We also need to do that in our own families. We need to do that amongst our own circles, your own work groups. Don't delete people because they have different opinions. Debate, enlighten, discuss, have a conversation. Do not put up those, lockdown left. We're taking out half of our allies. We need all the allies we can
we're
get.
hosting a really large anti-federal prohibition rally on the Illinois State Capitol steps on 420 from 6 to 8 p.m. We got the permits. We're working on getting it so the street's going to be closed down. If you're in Illinois, come to Springfield on 420 from 6 to 8 p.m. and call for everybody else to get what we're kind of enjoying, because it's not really legal if you can't grow it yourself. But we also have, and I'll be announcing on my Twitter, Keating for Change, it's over right here. Soon, a list of cooperating states. We are doing a call for a National Day of Action. We've got a month. Let's get the people out in the streets, and on April 20th, let's call for the end of federal prohibition, the end of these archaic policies that are still harming communities. People in legal states really don't think about the effects that these have on other places, and if they do, then they also realize the effect that it has on the expansion of business and the expansion of worker-owned cooperatives. So that's what I'm hoping is going to kick off a large portion of media for my campaign, is this large rally in a month. And if anybody has any questions or wants to get involved in the rally, just hit me up on Twitter at Keating4Change. info@sangamogreens.org is the email address, and I can send you all the information. And if we can get everybody working together on this, we can actually hold them to some of the campaign promises, because this is something that is going to be easy to do, but also is going to be super impactful.
Awesome. Really quick, Jose, we have like 4 minutes left.
Yeah, no, I'll be very quick then. So just about the media blackout. I mean, for me, myself, we've been fortunate enough that we've been able to secure a place in our voter registration guide booklet here, which goes out to hundreds of thousands of people. That was a very uphill battle. We had to raise thousands of dollars. But our supporters, because it's obviously anti-democratic, they don't want working class people like ourselves to actually, be able to have a statement in a book that's going to go out to so many people. So we were able to do that. We utilize third-party media. So there's some great resources with Breakthrough News, Liberation News is a newspaper aligned with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. We bank on going on programs like this one. So shout out to you all for having us, and I'll be participating tomorrow in more of the discussions. But also, fundamentally, how I came into this movement was in the parking lot of my dentist's office during a police brutality uprising after the murder of Ugandan refugee Alfred Alongo. And fundamentally, what continues carrying me out in this work is that I don't really abide by this belief that the halls of American democracy are so hallowed that civility must reign supreme. I mean, in the last campaign cycle, I ran against far-right reactionary Daryl Issa, and when they wouldn't let us on the stage in a town similar to one I grew up in called Valley Center, they wouldn't let us in the only debate of the cycle. Well, our people took that as a challenge to be like, well, if you won't allow democracy to be taken, we're going to take the stage ourselves. And we did exactly that. We took the stage, we forced their hand to say, we're on.
People are dying in the streets of preventable illnesses. You're not going to sit here and have your, catered meals and just act like, this is business as normal. And one last thing I just want to close out on is building unity amongst our class. Here in California, we're fortunate enough to work, closely with the Green Party. We have a unity slate that's coming out for different political offices, including, insurance commissioner, a few other kind of offices. I have the endorsement of the San Diego County Green Party chapter here. So, building those relationships, continuing to expand our networks, because together, obviously, the media blackout for third parties is real. And here in California, we're a top 2 primary state. We have to combat that with every avenue possible. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it with a lot of people power, basically.
Gentlemen, this has been tremendous. And we're going to give you all 30 seconds, closing remarks. Let people know where they can find you. We're going to go with Terrence, John, Ethan, Jose. I feel like I've met 4 new friends. Go ahead. 5 with Mitch. All right, go ahead. Let's go with Terrence.
Yeah, so thank you so much for this opportunity. And we talk about a third-party coalition. I think we have the beginnings of it right here. And I have so much love for my other panelists. You guys are great. I'll just say, I deal with social anxiety, a lot of it, and coming into these spaces is hard for me, but I knew it was important to get my opinion out there, to get my voice out there. I will say thank you for the opportunity to respond to the comments. There's nothing that frustrates me more than people that are confident in their ignorance. And so I will call those things out, and this has brought me out of my shell a little bit. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. And I will leave it there. My name is Terrence Cudney. I'm running for state senate. You can find me at Cudney4MA, CUDNEY4MA, on Twitter and Facebook and all those, and Cudney4MA.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's go with John.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody who's tuned in and has watched. My name is John Keating. I'm the Illinois Green Party candidate for the 13th District in the U.S. House. You can find me right here. Oh, wrong way. Change the .us, because that's what we need to do. We need to change the .us. You can find me on Twitter at Keating4Change. It's over here. And if anybody is interested and wants to help out with my campaign, currently I'm getting other accounts set up, but you can currently donate through Cash App at JKEAT42 and on Venmo at THAMC217. Thank you to everybody who is tuned in, and let's change the US.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, Ethan.
So my website again is oz2022.us. You can find a link to my Twitter on there. I think my Twitter is also oz2022us, if I'm not mistaken. And thanks again for having me. My slogan is Get Smart Kentucky, because they need to get smart and stop electing people that are oppressing them. So thanks again for having me, and I hope to talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. All right, Jose.
All righty, we'll close it out. Cortez for Congress, that's our platform. You can find us at cortezforcongress.org. That's our website. You can find us on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And of course, if you live in the 51st Congressional District, you can come out. We actually did, while I was here with you all today, our comrades here in San Diego were carrying out a phone banking fundraising event here at our office, the San Diego Justice Center, located in La Mesa, California. You can come out, participate, door knock, do the kind of work that we do as socialists, outside of election cycles, but, including in this one.
Yeah.
And of course, if you can, please donate to our campaign. Help us continue to bring this message to as many people as possible right there on that website, cortezforcongress.org. But thank you, RBN, for having us on this panel, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much.
Ladies, that was a great debate. Thank you both for doing this. I know you took both time out of your schedule, Steph and Sabrina, actually. So thank you for doing that. I see the panelists behind the stage already, but what I want to tell you, Steph, is I saw a lot of comments are saying you need to be a moderator more often, because you ask the right questions. You know your stuff. So great job, both of you.
Well, it was a pleasure being invited today, and I think the Third Party Summit is a wonderful platform for everybody to share this weekend with. And I know you're continuing tonight. You already have a panel going on next, and tomorrow as well. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Sabrina?
Thanks so much, guys. This was awesome. Sorry I was a little bit late, story of my life. But yeah, I enjoyed meeting all the candidates, and great topics, great conversation, and hopefully people are learning something from this summit.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
And Rome, I'll let you add yourself. I don't know when you're ready, so I'll let you add yourself. Or unless you want me to do it, I could do it.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. So, Compton or Jay back again for the next panel. And I'm gonna introduce the panelists here, but just so everybody understands, this is the Why Can't the Duopoly Be Reformed panel discussion here. Oh, that's Aaron. That's trying to get in, and Teddy. So soon as guys, I know you're watching. If soon as you get back in, I'll put you back up. So we have a great set of panelists here. I'll start right below me, and this is actually your first time on RBN, so I should introduce and let people know that you are also a candidate too. He's also a candidate, so you'll see him tomorrow on some panels on the candidate debate or segments. So let's start with John. John, can you just kind of introduce yourself briefly, sir?
Yeah, my name's Jonathan Howe. I'm running for the 14th Congressional District as a Libertarian. The 14th is currently represented by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Basically, my platform is peace, justice, and a clean planet through individual liberty. I wouldn't be running if I thought the duopoly could be reformed. Allegedly, my opponent is one of the more radical members of Congress. I don't think that's actually true. So I'm running, a campaign that's, focused on environmental issues where we can agree, things like ending the war on drugs, things like ending our wars overseas and abroad. I've worked with Green Party candidates. I'm trying to work with the Forward Party right now, and any party that is willing to work together, because I do believe we need third party unity.
Absolutely, and thank you for joining this particular panel. So, of course, there's Rome right there, right next to me, Rome. So whenever you want to say something, just do. And then we have, you haven't seen her. Maybe, I don't know if you've been on somebody's show, but you haven't seen her since the General Strike Summit, and happy to see you back. Laura, how are you doing? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you for extending the invitation, CJ. And it's that was a pleasure to join the General Strike Summit, and I feel excited and nervous. Somebody mentioned getting a little bit of social anxiety, and I think I have a little bit of that. Anyway, how do I want to introduce myself? Everybody knows me from the Red Berets and as a craftivist. They might know me, although I've tweeted less about it recently, as a veteran for peace. What's fresh on my mind right now is I'm really grateful to have healthcare. I have healthcare because, I served for a few years, but my husband retired, so we served in the military industrial complex. That's what affords me the guarantee that I can go see a doctor. I have something really weird going on. So I feel a little bit nervous. I hope I don't tear up. I've been to the ER and to urgent care a couple of times in the last 8 days. I have numbness. Sorry, I think I just need to share this or it's going to be weird because I've had back pain for quite a few months. I'm a holistic health practitioner. I do massage and craniosacral therapy. But anyway, there's this like numbness in my skin. It's as though I had a general anesthetic, everything around my stomach, all around the side, my mid to lower back, and all the way down the anterior part of my leg. And it's like,
okay, so what I did was I filled my casserole dish, the chicken, big chicken on the bottom. I then filled it with peas, quinoa on top, and then filled it up with the cream of chicken soup up to the top. And now I'm going to bake that in the oven at that same 350. There. I'm going to take my same dish from the soup that I've rinsed out, quick washed. I'm creating quite a mess today. I will be cleaning this up tonight, or else I will be getting lectured later. Now we're going to do our shatter butter, 2 sticks of butter, gram of shatter, slow cook, very, very lightly, very slow cook for 30 minutes. And that's going to make our butter for the day. Got a lot of people on this. This panel is huge. All right, now I got a bunch of quinoa left over. Yeah, do I have this right?
To be your own IT guy and cameraman and everything.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this up, guys, because from here on out, it's just sitting. But I've gone through my 2 vegan dishes. I now have the last one in the. I got that layered casserole in the oven. I'm gonna bake that for 30 minutes. I have melted my butter, nice and melty, butter. I'm now gonna throw my gram of shatter in there. That's gonna slowly cook at the lowest simmer I got on here for 30 minutes plus to make sure the fats connect with the THC from my edibles. So 30 minutes is sitting here cooked bacon, 30 minutes is sitting here. And then if you want to check out my YouTube channel, I have the edibles that I will be making. I have the video for that as a nice short clip. I'm not gonna make you sit here for 40 minutes before I even start doing that. So the edibles is on my YouTube page, Stoney Progressive. I'm going to be putting that shatter into that, slow cooking it for 40 minutes, pulling that out in about 30 minutes. It's all going to be ready in about an hour. And then you take that batter and put it in the fridge. But again, go to Stoney Progressive on YouTube to check out my edibles. Besides that, that was 2 vegan dishes. Moving into my edibles for my day of prep cooking. So that 2.5 hours is how I prep cook for the week. And besides that, just sandwiches, peanut butter and honey, peanut butter and jelly, some fake turkey. I'm trying out. It's pretty decent. Got the fake turkey for your vegan sandwiches. And yeah, stay stony, stay healthy, stay woke. That's how I cook. Some politics or some podcasts on and some good food. And with that going in, I'm going to call that a wrap. So yeah, the rest is nice and slow, and I will see you guys when we talk politics soon. Thanks for hanging out. Motherfucking